The afternoon sun was bright, pouring golden light across the streets. A black American man, dressed sharply in a suit, was driving home after a long day of service. He wasn't just any man. He was a respected government officer, a man who carried the trust of his people. But the police didn't see that. They saw his skin color, and in broad daylight, suspicion turned into violence. A gunshot cracked through the air. A man's life, his honor, his truth shattered on the hot pavement under the sun. This wasn't just a mistake. This was racism pulling the trigger. The afternoon sun shone mercilessly over the city streets, filling every corner with its brightness. People went about their day, children laughing on bicycles, shopkeepers arranging goods, and cars moving steadily through the traffic. It looked like an ordinary day, the kind that makes you believe life is safe, predictable, and calm. But for Michael Harris, a 42-year-old black American man, this day would change everything. Michael wasn't just an ordinary citizen. He was a senior government officer, known for his intelligence, his loyalty, and his tireless service to his country. Dressed in a navy blue suit, tie neatly fastened, an ID card resting in his briefcase, he looked every bit the respectable officer he was. As he drove his black sedan down Maple Avenue, he felt proud. Just an hour earlier, he had finalized a deal that could benefit hundreds of underprivileged families in his city. It was the kind of work he lived for, bringing justice, opportunity, and fairness to those who had been ignored for too long. But fate had other plans. A police cruiser pulled up behind him, sirens flashing. Michael calmly pulled over to the side of the road. He had nothing to hide. His license was valid, his papers were clean, and he carried the badge of authority with him. He rolled down his window, preparing to greet the officer with respect. Two policemen stepped out. Their eyes scanned him. Not his suit, not his calm demeanor, not his government insignia. They scanned his skin. "Step out of the car," one of them ordered, hand resting on his holster. Michael was confused but complied. "Is there a problem, officer?" he asked politely. "There have been reports of drug trafficking in this area," the officer said sharply. "You match the description." Michael almost laughed at the absurdity. Him, a drug trafficker, a man who spent years fighting crime from inside the system. But he kept calm. "I think you're mistaken. I can show you my ID, my—" "Hands where I can see them," the officer barked, his voice filled with hostility. A crowd began to gather. Neighbors peeked out from porches. Shopkeepers stepped closer. Phones came out to record. The sun blazed hotter and the tension thickened. Michael raised his hands slowly. "Please listen. I am a government officer. My name is Michael Harris. But before the words could leave his mouth, the second officer shouted, "He's reaching for something." A gunshot tore through the silence. Michael fell to the pavement, his blood staining the sunlit concrete. Gasps and screams erupted from the crowd. His briefcase flew open beside him. Papers and his government ID scattered across the ground. The officer lowered his weapon, chest heaving. "Suspect neutralized," he muttered into his radio. But the truth was there in plain sight. Michael Harris wasn't a suspect. He wasn't a criminal. He wasn't a threat. He was a victim of prejudice, of suspicion, of racism. The crowd shouted in anger. He wasn't armed. He showed his hands. You killed him because he was black. Within minutes, ambulances and media vans swarmed the scene. Cameras flashed, microphones shoved forward, and the question echoed across every channel. Did the police just kill a government officer because of his skin color? The city, once calm under the golden sunlight, now burned with outrage. Michael Harris was rushed to the hospital, but the bullet had done its work. Doctors shook their heads. Within hours, he was gone. The news spread like wildfire. Headlines screamed across the nation. Government officer shot by police in broad daylight. Another black life taken by racism? Justice for Michael Harris. And thus began a storm that would shake not just the city, but the entire country. The city was restless. Protests broke out within hours of Michael Harris's death. People filled the streets carrying banners that read, "Justice for Michael! Stop racist killings. Our skin is not a crime." The image of Michael lying in his suit, blood soaking the pavement under the afternoon sun, spread across social media like wildfire. Millions watched in horror. It wasn't just another tragic incident. This was a man of the government, a protector of justice, slain by those sworn to uphold the law. The police department under fire. At a press conference the next morning, the police chief stepped forward, flanked by officers in uniform. Cameras flashed, questions flew. The chief cleared his throat nervously. Our officers responded to credible intelligence regarding drug trafficking in the area, he explained. The suspect matched the description. He refused to comply and reached for what appeared to be a weapon. The officers acted in self-defense. The room erupted with shouts. "Where's the weapon? Why wasn't his ID checked? Do you realize you shot a government officer?" The chief's face paled. "The matter is under investigation," he said quickly. But the truth was damning. No drugs were found, no weapon, only papers, policy drafts, community reform plans, and Michael's government ID card, the family's pain. Meanwhile, Michael's family drowned in grief. His wife, Angela Harris, sat in their living room surrounded by reporters. Her eyes were red, her voice trembling. "My husband was a good man," she whispered. "He dedicated his life to serving this country. He believed in justice, in fairness. And now he's gone. Taken from me, from our children. Because someone looked at his skin and decided he was guilty. Their 16-year-old son broke down on camera. They didn't even give him a chance." He raised his hands. He told them who he was, but they didn't care. The video went viral, fueling the anger of millions. The investigation heats up. Civil rights lawyers demanded action. "This is not an accident," one attorney declared. "This is systemic racism, and it killed Michael Harris." Investigators were forced to dig deeper. Bodycam footage was released. The world watched as Michael complied, raised his hands and pleaded, "Please, I am a government officer. I can show you my ID." Seconds later, the fatal shot. The footage destroyed the police department's defense. The narrative of self-defense collapsed like a house of cards. What remained was the undeniable image of an unarmed black man killed in daylight for no reason other than prejudice. The city demanded justice. The officers involved were suspended, and soon charges were filed. Manslaughter, misconduct, abuse of authority. The courtroom door opens. Months later, the trial began. Reporters camped outside the courthouse. Protesters filled the streets, chanting for justice. The air was thick with tension. Inside the courtroom, rows of spectators sat silently as the judge entered. On one side, Michael's family, eyes heavy with grief, hands clasped tightly. On the other, the accused officers, dressed in suits instead of uniforms, trying to hide behind lawyers and legal jargon. The prosecutor's voice rang out, "Your Honor, this is not just a case of negligence. This is a case of racism, prejudice, and the unlawful killing of an innocent man, a government officer who served his country faithfully. Today, we seek justice not only for Michael Harris, but for every victim of racial injustice." The defense attorney stood, cold and calculated. "My clients acted in the line of duty. They believed their lives were in danger. They responded as trained officers would. This is not about race. This is about a split-second decision under pressure." The courtroom buzzed with murmurs. The battle lines were drawn. The trial had begun. The courtroom was packed. Every seat taken. Every corner filled with people desperate to hear the truth. Journalists scribbled furiously, cameras clicked, and the world watched as the trial of the century unfolded. For weeks, witnesses took the stand. Neighbors described what they saw. Shopkeepers testified how Michael had complied with every command. Experts analyzed the body cam footage frame by frame. Every piece of evidence pointed to the same conclusion. Michael Harris was not a threat. He was a victim. The officer speaks. Finally, it was time for the officer who pulled the trigger to testify. The man walked to the witness stand, his hands shaking slightly. He adjusted the microphone and avoided the eyes of the crowd. The prosecutor leaned in. "Officer, why did you shoot Michael Harris?" The officer swallowed hard. I thought he was reaching for a weapon." "Did you see a weapon?" Silence. "No," he admitted. "Did you give him time to show his ID?" Another pause. "No." The prosecutor's voice grew sharper. "So what exactly made you decide he was dangerous?" The officer's face reddened. He hesitated, then finally spoke the words that froze the room. Because he was black, and every drug dealer description we had. They all looked like him." The courtroom gasped. Michael's family sobbed. The judge's gavel slammed down to restore order. But the truth was already out. The officer had admitted it. He hadn't pulled the trigger because Michael posed a threat. He had pulled the trigger because racism told him to. The judge's verdict. After days of arguments, the jury deliberated. Hours turned into sleepless nights for the Harris family, waiting for justice. Finally, the verdict was read. "We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of manslaughter, guilty of misconduct, and guilty of abuse of authority." Gasps of relief swept through the courtroom. Angela Harris clutched her children tightly, tears streaming down her face. Protesters outside erupted in cheers as the news broke. But the judge wasn't finished. "This court recognizes that the death of Michael Harris is not just the result of one man's actions, but the reflection of a system poisoned by prejudice. Today we deliver justice for one family, but the fight for equality must continue for all. The world reacts. The story spread across the globe. Michael's name became a symbol of justice. Streets were painted with his image. Songs were written in his honor. And activists held his photo high during marches. He was gone, but his legacy ignited a fire that demanded change. Emotional closing. Michael Harris wasn't killed because of what he did. He was killed because of what he looked like. And in that brutal moment of daylight, the world was reminded that racism isn't hidden in the shadows. It walks boldly under the sun. If Michael's story touched your heart, don't let it fade into silence. Share this video. Speak out against racism. Subscribe to Voices of Freedom. Because every story we tell is a step closer to justice.